Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks out there. Welcome to the channel RPG with DBJ. So, you awaken in a pod, your body cold, some kind of weird mucus like fluid, cascading off of your body as the pod opens up and you're deposited directly on the floor, haplessly. You can barely remember uh, your past moments. Matter of fact, you can barely remember the past couple of weeks, and someone stands over you, dressed in medical outfit. They remove their mask, and it's someone that's very important to you. Maybe a loved one, a friend, someone that you really care about, and they're there. They're looking you in the eye, and finally, you can, as the fog lifts from your brain, you realize this person is someone who's always been there for you. And you're starting to recall some of the things that have happened. And you're like, how long have I been down? The person answers to you, well, you've been down a couple of weeks. We just got you spun back up. And I'm here to help you out. I'm here to be on your side. And you go about your adventure like a Jason Bourne Total Recall person, right? Now, that sounds like the beginnings of quite a number of things we've read or seen, and of course, mentioning Jason Bourne, the memory loss, the idea that you awaken and you're a badass and you need to go about your business. But the subject we're going to talk about today is trust, and sure, watching something like Jason Bourne is really cool, right? But imagine, if you will, while you're playing something like in a transhumanist sci-fi setting, like Altered Carbon or Eclipse phase, that the 3 weeks prior to this event, that the person that stands over you, that is your trusted confidant or someone you have a very romantic and intense relationship with, or maybe your handler or a fixer or a Mr. Johnson, the person that works for the agency or firewall that is helping you out in your time of need. Imagine the 3 weeks prior to that individual not only confronted you, but explained to you that they happen to have been not one, not two, but maybe five individuals, five other random NPCs that happened in your past, and they've been following you all this time, setting you up. They pull their gun out, take a rail bullet and put it in the back of your head, and tell you they've been plotting your death all along. Now, you're saying to yourself, well, okay, your character gets spun back up. You get respawned, as the term goes. You get respawned from an old copy of your brain, and maybe the last time you got into you've re-upped your psychological matrix was a couple of weeks ago, and you wake up and you have no idea that this individual has been plotting your demise and taking you down from some petty jealousy so long ago, and now you wake up. So would you trust yourself that you're not going to react to the prior knowledge of this person who's ingratiated themselves into your life? Could you trust yourself or the game master to introduce this plot element into the story? So we're here to talk about trust, and this is a very meta portion. And I feel like, and we talked about this. We've been talking about this all week, and we're coming around full circle because off camera we had a bit of a discussion about an integral part of transhumanist technology that has a very complicated story element to it, and it cannot be utilized unless you have trust amongst your entire group. And it's something that, mind you, this can be utilized in any other role-playing game, but I think it's an ingrained part of the game. And at some point, no matter how many bug hunts or black ops that your players go on, they're going to come across this. They're going to end up they're going to end up butting heads against this in the system, and the rationalization from as players and game masters, both in and out of game, is going to have some contention. So, for those who don't know, and I'm sure many of you already know this, that there's a technological advancement called the cortical stack, and it's basically a black box. It's a thumb drive. It is a chip in the back of the head, and it records your brain. It basically is a copy of you, and everything you do and see and experience is recorded, and then that cortical stack can be removed. Or using other technologies, your brain waves can be beamed out from your body, a biological or mechanical body, to an external source, or a copy of yourself exists on a computer system or in a stack, and to go on maybe a mission or to travel to another distant planetary location or habitat, your air quotes original self remains, but a copy of yourself is thank you, Rickard. A copy of yourself is beamed to another location to go on a mission. An example would be four player characters are tasked to go on essentially a suicide mission. So four copies of themselves are created. They are, let's say, they are in a habitat around Mars, but they have to go out to Neptune. So instead of physically traveling there, they beam their consciousness to a location in orbiting around Neptune. And so now at this very moment, there are two identical copies of these four player characters. So they are then spun up. Basically, they are inserted into biological and or synthetic bodies. They go on a mission. They know this mission is very dangerous. Maybe they need to beam the digital MacGuffin off of a derelict spaceship or something like that. So they go inside, and one by one, the characters get capped off. Boom, kill, boom, kill, boom, kill. One player hits the big red button that says, please don't press. They press the button, they beam off the information, and the starship goes and explodes. Okay. It normal process, right? But imagine if that adventure took place over a couple of days, weeks, months even, and they were not able, maybe due to being infected with a basilisk hack or some exigent virus or something like that, that it was dangerous for them to beam off their consciousness. So after success, it was a successful mission. They knew this was a suicide mission. And then those player characters then get spun up from their originals that are floating around orbiting Mars with no recollection of anything that happened over those past couple of weeks. So sure, in a book, in a television show, in a movie, a graphic novel, that sounds cool, right? But if you're a player character and you're the game master that ran this adventure, which all things being equal, it's a pretty common adventure trope, right? PCs get armored up, they get a bunch of guns, they go on a mission, they get killed because, well, death is just another state in this game rather than it being being true death, right? So, do you think that you as a player could you keep yourself from metagaming the fact that this dangerous thing was out there and you don't remember any of it? Or as a game master, can you keep track of the fact that you're using this as a further plot point in your expanding universe of sorts and storytelling, but you now have to remember the six other adventures they've gone on and what they remember and don't remember? And then to complicate things even further, let's say one or two of the player characters was able to beam themselves out, but one of the player's characters ends up getting infected by the exigent virus or something, or get some kind of virus or corruption or something in their cortical stack, and goes, guys, I can't get out of here. You just don't even take my stack because we're going to spread this to the the inner rim or something like that. So don't do it. I'm just going to blow my stack right now. And they take their gun and put I don't know, a gyrojet missile in the back of their head or something, right? Okay. Common, dark, and kind of nasty, but common. And then now you have maybe 3-player characters that remembers everything, but then 1-player character that doesn't. And so the 1-player character now has to go along with the fact that they're missing a 3-week gap of their memory. And then the game master has to remember, okay, 3 players know what's going on, 1 player doesn't. So their character doesn't know it, but the player does know it. And okay, so on and so forth. So let's come back down to earth, say, and talk about this idea of trust. And one big part of needing trust in transhumanist gaming is this idea that we are not just playing with the physical bodies of the characters, their destruction, their death, and such, but we're playing with the manipulation and destruction and editing of a character's memories. Okay, so a player could come to the table and say, well, my character is a badass mercenary that went on a number of missions, has a bunch of friends and stuff, and decided to become a mercenary, and now I'm out there in the great big void of space being a space marine. Would a player be okay with the game master coming to that player 5 sessions later and going, yeah, remember that long life that you thought you had? It was actually downloaded. You've only been alive for like 4 months, right? You're a noob. The real person that went through those real experiences is long gone, and a corporation found that and decided to make some soldiers, and you're just one of like 20 other soldiers. Would you be willing to accept a surprise or an edit or a memory that's been misappropriated and inserted into your character after the fact? And so I find that so many of us that have bothered to crack the book open of like Altered Carbon or Eclipse Phase or GURPS Transhuman Space and so many other games, and we read it and we're like, wow, you know. Yeah, Rickard's like, it was nice knowing you guys, but in truth, it's rather not. Blows own stack. Yeah, that's, as a matter of fact, in the first edition of Eclipse Phase, there's a story where the characters go down to Earth, and basically part of the mission is they blow their own stacks out or each other's stack out. Right? It's the proverbial zombie apocalypse, and it's like, hey guys, if I'm about to be eaten by zombies, I need you to kill me, right? Put a bullet in my head because I don't want to have my internal organs eaten by the undead. And a similar dark aspect of this is incorporated inside of transhumanist gaming. But the other part of that is can you accept, both as a game master and as individual player and as a group, the idea that what you think you know may not be the reality of it. So let me go back to the Jason Bourne waking up from cold storage, and I have no memory, but my best friend or lover or partner or contact or something is standing there. In the Jason Bourne movie, we begin from the point of view of him having no memory. So now we have no context as to his heroic attitude, right? That here's a person who's on the run from the bad guys. But what if we started that story from the moment at which he was a badass assassin about to kill somebody who's a person with no remorse and just happened to have a slight bit of remorse or humanity in him because he can't kill the bad guy because the bad guy's kid is sitting on his lap, right? That's where the story starts. And so if you're the player character who had to run or fight or blow their own stack out or falls into the sun or is trapped on some kind of alien exoplanet or something, and we rewind back to the moment just before that player character went on that mission, and having no idea what the ramifications of going on that mission were, could you or would you be willing to accept that your player now, who's happy to be back with their partner, is literally the big bad guy in the story, and work through it? Now, sure, I'm sure there's plenty of tables that were like where I'm bringing up these scenarios, and they're like, hell yeah, like I'm bringing on, like I'm ready for this. But there's some people that just can't help themselves. They can't help but metagame. They can't help but understand that well, I'm supposed to pretend that this person is my best friend, but last session they I don't know, they kicked me into a ramjet, and my body went splat, and now that I'm back, um I'm going to accidentally uncover the fact that this person is the bad person after 5 minutes of the game, right? Now, mind you, Rickard and I had a little bit of a confrontation. Person who's a longtime participant and viewer had a little bit of a confrontation about the idea of like, how do you do it? Like, would you even do it? Because it's pretty complicated and rather you, you can create more problems than are necessary by using other techniques to get around the problem itself. Rickard goes on to say, wakes up in backup body, checks time, and looks at picture of his former companions. So these are the assholes I had to live with for the last month. Deletes the pictures. Glad I don't have to know them anymore. Right? Like, wait a minute. Like, for 3 weeks you've been down in the muck and the dirt, and you get that intense relationship that's built by the crucible of battle, and then you're spun back up and you're like, these guys? Pfft, whatever. I don't know you. I'm out. Right? That's a real thing too, right? But we were buddies. We bonded together in the battlefield. You're like, no, that was some other dude. I'm 3 weeks younger than that guy, and I don't know you. And as a matter of fact, I don't even like your attitude. Leave me alone. Right? That's a possibility. And so now mind you, there are ways to get around this. For example, let's say every player character gets annihilated at the exact same time. So everyone, including the game master, is on the same page as to the mission that they don't remember. There's also the idea that, say, for example, the same mission to orbiting Neptune, you could have some sort of like starship or habitat so that when the mission goes bad, their memories are only as old as the length of the mission, right? So it might only be an hour or something, no big deal. Or as in like Eclipse phase and some other transhuman settings, the player characters either have an implant or they're carrying something that beams their consciousness off, assuming that there's no danger in beaming their consciousness. So even if they do a suicide mission, they still remember everything by beaming their consciousness back to a starship or a base or some kind of black ops location or something like that. So you can continue on. Now, as well as the fact that there are, for example, in Eclipse Phase 2nd Edition, there is a pod. There's like a drone morph that's small, so if a player gets capped off in the middle of the adventure, they can still walk around. Their cortical stack could be inserted inside of like a portable synthetic body. Basically, it looks like a large cat or small dog sized mechanized unit that's able to follow the PCs around, and especially if they're in, say, something like a derelict starship or an abandoned habitat or something, you as a game master could maybe have a abandoned spin up location, right? Like maybe they go to the abandoned habitat and there's a lab with maybe 2 or 3 so, shall I say, shells or jackets that they could zip themselves into, and so that the player characters whose body's killed but their stack is still around could still participate in the adventure rather than getting killed, twiddling their thumbs while the rest of the people go on the suicide mission. So you could do that. Essentially, it's the equivalent of Dungeons and Dragons and going down into the Underdark, and a PC gets killed, but the PCs find trapped slaves, and then one of the slaves happens to be the another player character sheet, and they're like, well, I wrote up another player character, can I get inserted? Sure. It's the same thing, except the new participant is really the same participant, just spun up in a different body, right, with the same memories and stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah. Ricker says, yeah, it was a follow-up to the blowing his own stack line. Yeah. Deletes the pictures. Glad I don't have to know them anymore. Click. Now, I don't mean to make fun of, this is science fiction, so I'm not making fun of someone who is suicidal. I'm pointing out the fact that in a society where bodies are disposable and the human brain is just nothing but digital information, there can be some, it could be very easy to come across a problem where the PCs get to a situation where they shouldn't know something, but the player knows something, but the character shouldn't, or that the game master is in a situation where they're juggling information in their head about what the players should know, because they have 3 weeks of downtime, or what they call lack, in Eclipse phase, when they shouldn't know a particular piece of information, but the storyline is still moving ahead at the same rate. Yeah. Rickard says, yep, the classic trust in such in sci-fi Shadowrun and Johnson's, where of course the term Johnson is a title rather than in Shadowrun, where the Johnson's always the fixer. They're the one who gives the PCs the mission, and then of course there's the double cross. But the problem is, if you've been double crossed, but the player knows they've been double crossed, but the player doesn't remember. Sorry, the character does not remember being double crossed, but the player does. Can the game master trust that the players will not act on that information? Now, we talked about this off camera, that as a game master, when we insert the double cross, more likely than not, the payoff is to play through the next scenario knowing that this person has double crossed you, but you can't act on that information because you trust them implicitly, to then discover that you've been double crossed, to then recount what happened, to then take your revenge, right? Now, some players can't help themselves, and they're going to act on that information anyway, right? But I think it's a better payoff to pretend that you don't know the information, to then get the revenge on the person that you want, as long as you're the game master, because any game master worth his salt. And I understand there's some that are like gotcha game masters, but for the most part nowadays, I think it's better to have that payoff, and this is the kind of gaming where it makes sense within the world to have a great payoff like that, where you don't remember what happened before and you wake up, or you wake up from being spun up, and maybe your player character has a brand new personality because something's been eliminated or deleted, or the game master inserts some NPC or some hidden trait or something into your brain that was never even discussed before or something. But I would say, as a game master, be careful about surprising your players. But players, be aware that to really embrace, mind you don't have to include this at all in a game. You could completely ignore this "I lost my memory" thing and just assume that, well, when my character respawns, basically I remember everything, right? You could very easily do that, but I think you might be missing something. And it's a fine line between breaking expectations and inserting a surprise. So I'm going to get back to that. But Rick goes on to say the players, NPCs really don't trust the Johnson, but they trust the DM in that they run, that the run they are hired to do will be fun. And Shadowrun, Cyberpunk, any permutation thereof, that's part of the game, right? Like you're given a mission. You 99% of the time, the mission, what you've been told is not exactly what's gonna happen. I mean, sure, could you be hired by a Johnson or a fixer or whatever, and go to the corporation and steal the sensitive files? Sure, that's on paper that's how it's supposed to go, but you know, has the corporation been alerted? Is there a rival Shadowrun group trying to steal the exact same information? If when you steal the information, is it basically a virus that can't get out? You know, there's all these other plots, and then of course none of that may have to do with the Johnson, unless the Johnson basically didn't reveal this information, knowing that no one would bother taking the job because it would be a suicide mission, right? That's just par for the course. But anyone who would bother playing Shadowrun or Cyberpunk, you know, 2027 or whatever the case may be, it's like you accept that because that's part of the world. The double cross, the mission that goes wrong, the data that's stolen that happens to reveal even further dangerous and dark materials or something. The NPC that is supposed to help you on the mission that is double crossing one of the player characters, and so now it's all that kind of stuff is just part of the game. When it comes to like the transhuman portion of it, I think we need to understand that waking up and having a loss of memory or believing your character is some kind of notorious criminal, but really it's an overlay because you've been given this part of your personality to infiltrate some kind of hidden faction or something. I think you should embrace that, and you don't need to use it, but I think you're missing part of the game if you don't utilize that kind of thing. Yeah, Rick says, "Quote PC, you think you can trust the fixer?" PC number 2, like, trust a fixer? Like, what? Nobody trusts a fixer. Yeah, PC 3 says, look, kid, they will double cross us at the worst possible moment. We'll pull through, get paid, and move on. That's how this works. Yep, that's exactly how it works. Hell, that is an exact conversation that probably happens all the time, right? Like, yeah, of course they're going to double cross us, but look, we're going to get paid. We're going to pull through like we normally do. We're going to pull out our guns. Probably one or more of us is going to probably toss some kind of explosive because, you know, we're spies and we're trying to hide, right? And we're going to come out on the other end. Ogre says, I've got to say that it's important to differentiate between a Johnson and a fixer. The fixer is the person who facilitates the contact with the employer, the Johnson. The fixer is mostly trustworthy as they rely upon personal reputation. I hear you, Ogre, but that's like evil. What is it? That's like the Sith going, there can only be two, right? Like evil people don't follow rules. So I agree with you, but on the other hand, there's always the double cross as well. And sure, maybe it's just a little manipulation of the terminology, but you get my point, right? A Johnson is the slang term for a fixer in Shadowrun. But sure, you know, how many times have we seen a heist movie where the whole point of the heist movie is there's no trust amongst thieves, right? And of course, all the thieves are like, we're going to do this heist and we're going to get away with it. We're going to have a lot of money. Of course, there's a double cross. Of course there is. Now, in transhuman games, though, it's not just the physical double cross, but there is this idea that while we have read and consumed media where the protagonist you're following and rooting for happens to be artificial compared to and I say artificial in a very nebulous term. And an example would be, say, the plot of, of course, Jason Bourne, and the plot of Total Recall, where person wakes up and they're just like, oh, I'm a construction worker, and then they come to find out they have all these badass combat skills. Then they go to Mars, and then they infiltrate an underground that's on Mars, only to find out that their true personality did this on purpose, for the sole purpose of infiltrating the good people, because technically their personality is bad. Now, if you're a player, would you be willing to accept the fact that the game master has the ability to alter the very nature of your character? And in very few games, this idea that the game master could insert or delete or modify your own memories of who you think you are and what you remember is a very delicate thread to pull on, if you understand what I'm saying, right? And despite the fact that, again, you don't even need to have any of these elements in, I think you're missing a little something, but it needs to be handled very tenderly and very above board, very meta styled, because on one hand, maybe you have a player who's like at your table, it's like, dude, I wrote up a backstory. I really don't want you messing with my backstory. Whereas you may have another player character that's like, look, listen, my backstory's, you can take it and use it and take the building blocks and move it around as much as you like. All I'm saying is my player character remembers a certain history, but if you tell me it was created in a lab and pieced together, pieced together bit by bit because of some hacker or a rogue AI or some corporate underling wanted to extricate some piece of information, and I happen to be the repository for this information, sure, yeah. Rickard's like, yeah, but yeah, never trust a Johnson, just don't. Of course you're not supposed to trust him. That's the whole part of the game, right? If you're a Shadowrunner, yeah, you're, as a matter of fact, that's part of the conflict and the drama, because you can't have conflict without that kind of antagonism, that kind of drama, because the whole point is to go on a mission of which you don't know all the details, right? Like, sure, you could play the game where every mission is exactly as described by the Johnson done, but then you're going like, okay, well, maybe this is like there's some kind of like mono theme to it where it's like, oh, great, everything I expected happened exactly the way I expected. Yawn. As opposed to the double crossing and the hidden information and the heist that is supposed to uncover corporate secrets, but you end up finding out there's a even larger government conspiracy to end all life or something, and you're just like, what? Yeah. Dead Man says rob the fixer to get all the good toys. Fixers are pretty used to not being trusted. Or steal the toys, and then you realize that's part of the plot too, right? Oh man. Rickard says he says, quote, the Johnson, once you retrieve the data, we will wire you the agreed upon amount. PC. We get paid up front. Payment after the job is done always gets bloody for your HR department. Yeah, you never want to not pay a Shadowrunner. that's a good way to get one of those mono blades in the back of the head. Yeah, you never do that. Half up front. It's like, oh, are you serious? Half up front? That means you really try to double cross us, right? Oh man. Omen says, I remember setting up a more Christianized version of Shadowrun 5e with the corporations being secretly run by demonic or infernal entities. Considering what kind of individuals run these corporations, is not that big of a change. Yeah. The CEO is a demon, and everyone's looking around like, yeah, we knew. No, no, I mean a real demon. Whatever, not far from it, right? Oh man, but going back to the trust issue in these games, the the going on the mission, the recovering, usually recovering of data or getting involved in these intricate plots. There is this other idea of the game master also being allowed to, not being allowed, but using a story element where the player character confronts themselves as opposed to confronting someone else. So an example would be, let's pull on the Total Recall thread where the player character uncovers some kind of document or recording, or they receive a message placed there by themselves because they themselves have decided that it's necessary for themselves to delete this in particular memory out of their own brain, and then trying to uncover, unspool the tangled web of why they would decide, their own player character would decide to delete their own memories. Now, sure, if you're the player, you could come to the table and say, "Hey, GM, could you please run this? Because I have this idea where I don't remember what happened in my past, but I did it on purpose. But I don't understand why. But I'm giving you permission to come up with the reason why my character would bother doing a thing." Right now, it could be because you absorb some kind of basilisk hack, and now you have some kind of virus inside of your stack, so you can't. It was necessary for you to delete yourself. Maybe as a character, maybe your character was basically an a-hole in their past life, and this is their opportunity to make amends for the things that they've done in their life. Or maybe maybe the SAP happens to be just a normal thing. You work for a black ops group and you're a mercenary company, and you basically promise, you listen, we go on a mission, but we ensure that no information is left. There's no evidence, including our own memories, right? That might be a policy in your mercenary group. We're the Black Sabers, and we go on intergalactic missions, and at the end of those missions, we all make sure we do the Men in Black, right? We do the deleting of our own memories or whatnot, after getting paid by our employer or whatnot, which could make its own problems, especially if your employer is like, "I don't trust that they deleted their own memories. As a matter of fact, I want them deleted completely out of life," right? And now you're being hunted by some mega corporation, and you as a PC are like, "Why are they hunting me? I've never worked for them. We don't have any animosity at all." Come to find out that you've been working for them for months or maybe even years, and they're trying to to disavow you or whatever the case may be, right? Red Dice Diary says, "I love the contrast in Total Recall where he has a completely different personality in the past. If our experiences and memories make us who we are, how would deleting swaths of stuff from our memories change us as people?" And, that's another thing as well where, technically you could play two different player characters, even though you're the exact same person. Like you're saying, Red Dice Diaries, that you're saying if you delete a major section of your personality because our experiences make up that part of it. Let's say you delete something very traumatic out of your personality, or an experience that you had that affected your personality, and you delete that part. Um, who are you now then? Right? I am not making light of this fact, but soldiers that may come back from the battlefield may suffer PTSD. What happens if you are that soldier before you left? Right? You have these two different soldiers, one before, well trained before they went on a mission, one after the mission. Are they the same individual? Well, yeah, kind of, but no. And how do you juggle that? Well, it takes a lot of trust to juggle something like that, especially if you're a player character that's, let's say you're getting bored with the person you're playing, and you tell the game master, "Hey, you know what? I want an excuse to spin up my character from 8 months ago. I want to go back to my old self because I don't like where my character has gone so far." And so my character is going to personally delete out their memories of these traumatic events and rewind back to their past, right? That's a possibility as well. Like I said, it could be a a mission basis, like, hey, you have to delete your memories. It could be by accident. The player goes on suicide mission, their stack gets stuck on an abandoned ship. You get spun up from like 3 weeks earlier to try to go retrieve your own missing psychological aspects to re-instance yourself back together again, maybe. It could, like I said, it's getting kind of confusing, but it's really hard to do it if everyone at the table, even though it is confusing, says, okay, guys, let's take a deep breath. Okay, so I don't remember this individual, but I do remember this other one. And, like Rick was talking about, it's like, this is going to get really confusing to, when one of your NPCs is like, bastard, you owe me money. And you're like, no, I don't. Or at least I don't remember owing you money. What was last week? Red Dice says, what if you're being hunted by a replica of yourself who doesn't have the memories from the troublesome mission? That's another thing I was going to bring up. Thank you very much for getting there, right? How easy, matter of fact, not even easy. I think it's a trope of this genre that you end up confronting yourself. Hell, they did that in the second season of Altered Carbon, right? Takashi Kovacs or whatever, butchered his friggin' last name. Tak wakes up and he's running around, and of course, what happens? They send an agent after him who is a spun up version of himself, minus, I don't know, 250 years of experience or something. Hell, even Takashi woke up 200 plus years of being down in cold storage to have to come back into a world where 250 years have passed and he has no idea what happened. I have a little problem with 250 years passing and things being kind of the same. But if you think about the first season of Altered Carbon, he's running around, and at the end of the show, you end up finding out, yes, spoiler alert, you find out that his sister, who he's lost contact with and probably thought she died 250 years ago, has literally been in his life as like 4 to 6 other NPCs orbiting around him in real time, and he didn't know it. So these are things that I feel are in the Game Master's toolbox, but they're really tender things. They're really sensitive issues you might pull out, because player characters can get real possessive of their own creations, and to send an enemy after them that is themselves from a different era, or to tell a player character that they don't remember ever having been at a location, but all the people they encounter remember them and may hate them or something. I feel like that's a not just a trope, but something you may even confront accidentally just by playing the game in the first place. Yeah. So yeah. Ricker says, talk about Shadowrun, yeah. We get paid up front, right? And he goes on to say, half up front? What? You think we're doing discount runs at half price? Well, remember, Johnsons don't like to pay people all up front because, of course, you can just take the money and run. And, that brings up its own problems, right? Hey, we're going to take the money and run, as you're getting hunted by some kind of underground faction plus corporations plus, other shadow runners that are hired to take you out, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, he goes on to say, that was another sleeve, mate. Sorry if that sleeve screwed you over, but that was another life. Maybe. Could you? Do people in this world, are they used to individuals, or do they accept individuals who are now in another sleeve with another memory, letting the past go and rediscovering this new individual? I don't know. I mean, hell, being double crossed by this person who is your intimate partner, and then you end up meeting that intimate partner later who was spun up from a person who was, prior to being manipulated into to double crossing the player characters and then reinserting themselves into the player character's life again, would the player character then blame them for the double cross, even though they don't remember ever double crossing the player character in the first place? Kind of weird. Red Dice says, yeah, I've erased 250 years of of gaming a Shadowrun character. Like, yeah. 250 years is a long time for things not to change. Although in this futuristic society, maybe there's no desire or impetus to change things, because there's an effect of immortality. So, our lifespans push us to wanting to do or achieve things in a fast manner. Maybe that's removed in the future. But also, who's to say, like, for example, who's to say that an intense relationship with an NPC doesn't have a strange triangle where the PC finds out that the NPC is having a relationship with a copy of the PC somewhere else, either by choice, like PC goes on a mission, I don't know, romantic partners, like they keep going on missions and on Shadowruns, or we'll talk about Shadowrun. They keep going on these missions or something like that. I'm going to use my ill-gotten gains and spin up a copy of the PC so that I can have a relationship with them at home while they're out doing missions or something, right? I mean, that's a possibility as well, which gets kind of complicated stuff. But there's so many aspects of, like, this idea that who you think you are and where, mind you, we're made up of our experiences, like Red Dice Diaries has mentioned. We are a confluence of all the things that we believe and we encounter and we learn, to find out that part of that, or even none of that, is true. Heck, Blade Runner 2049, spoiler alert, had Ryan Gosling being a character who had these intense memories, only to find out that those memories were from someone else, and he basically didn't have any memories of his own, or couldn't trust his own memories, right? You could even have a player character who is addicted to other people's memories and is trying to fill a void in their life, maybe to absorb someone else's memories. Heck, they could even imagine a serial killer in the future who is trying to live other people's lives by stealing their memories and becoming them and inserting themselves in the lives of these other people, after killing it, like a futuristic digital doppelganger of type of individual is a possibility as well. Yeah. Red Dice says, how about if you go on a mission and are lost, presumed dead? You finally make it back home to find out they spun up a new version of you. Yep, thinking the original was dead, who has been living the life you missed. Hell's yes. Hell yes. You go on a mission and they're like, well, how much time should we wait? Well, we're only going to wait like a month. And after that, they're probably going. They got stuck on some exoplanet, or their cortical stack was dumped down to some kind of like cryo volcano or something. Or, it's, despite the fact that in the game there is this black box in the back of your head, based on where that black box is located, you may not be able to be recovered anyway, right? So, yeah. You're so silly. Almost like I'm addicted to DBJ's memories as a postal officer in America. Can't get enough of traveling all day. Or is that me? Is it me? And then, of course, we have this idea of, like, who is the copy, right? If you go on a mission and then someone spins up a copy of you that starts living your life, are they really a copy? Or are you the copy? And does it really matter? I mean, legally, sure, there's probably an issue as to who is a copy and who isn't. But on the other hand, it's like, well, does it really matter? One of you is going to have to pick who's going to have to disappear, right? How many players will allow their character to be deleted because some other NPC who happens to be an exact copy of them has been living a grand life, and they just happen to come back from cold storage or lost on some, habitat in the Oort cloud or something like that, right? Rickard says, wait, they do a jump of 250 years between the first and second season? No. I don't know how much time happened between the first and second season. In the first season, you get a montage, and then Takashi wakes up after 250 years. So it's the beginning of the first season. The character wakes up, and much like a noir detective mystery, where maybe a player character is murdered and they are woken up from a past version of themselves or been in cold storage for a long time, it's possible a player character could be woken up after dozens of years to be tasked with the act of, hey, listen, we just found you in cold storage. You might want to find out who bothered killing you in the first place or threw you in cold storage to begin with, because you've been down for a while. Or hell, every NPC that they've ever known has gone on with their own lives in one manner or another. So everyone that they remember, let's say an intense romantic relationship with someone, you come to find out that they've already moved on and had kids, and the good and bad has already happened, and you're just like, dude, I was only asleep for 5 minutes. And they're like, that wasn't 5 minutes, that was like 5 years. Deadman says between season 1 and season 2 was 90 years. Yep, 90 years. I understand the technology being able to pass through a length of time of that matter. I just have a problem with things not changing over that amount of time. Things change in a year, let alone like 90 years and 250 years and things like that. Red Dice says, I can see I'm going to have to watch Altered Carbon now. Yes, and as a matter of fact, the main character between seasons 1 and 2, the main character's sleeve is, I believe there were 1, 2, 3, at least 4 different actors played the main character as the sleeve. One of which was in a flashback scene. 2, I believe, were Asian. 1 black, 1 Caucasian. Anthony Mackie? I can't remember the main character from the first season, and then Will Yun Lee is also portrays him as well. Yep. Ricker said, "Yeah, fucking mess of a show." Dude, I know you are really hurt that they screwed around with the books and stuff for the show. I get it, and I don't disagree with you, man. I don't disagree. I've never read the books, but I feel like I can see where the gaps are. So yeah. Ricker says, wait, so it's between the prologue and the actual first season? Yeah. In the first season of the show, yes. He spun up after 250 years of being down. Yep. Yeah, Ricker says, or watch it, then read the books, because going from the books to the series just shows how much of a mess the show is. Yeah, you're a big fan of that, dude. I get it. Yeah, because they kind of ripped it apart. Tesla Ranger says, childhood Takashi is played by Morgan Gao. Oh, I forgot that. Yes, at least 5. Takashi at Stronghold is played by William Lee. Takashi, when he's being caught by Jaeger is played by Byron Mann. A clone of his sleeve turns up in the present as well. Present day Takashi is played by Joel Kinnaman. That's in season 1, and Anthony Mackie in season 2, after briefly being played by Korean musician. I'm going to mispronounce the name. Jihei, maybe. And while he's in virtual reality, he briefly impersonates Captain Tanaka, played by Hiro Kanagawa. Wow, that's right. That's right, because in virtual reality, he did that as well. Forgot about that one, and I forgot about the childhood version of himself as well. And it's it gets really complicated, and that's kind of the fun of playing in these games, right? The complicatedness of it, of popping back and forth between different sleeves, and then your memories being altered as well, and all that kind of stuff is really cool, especially if a player character gets stuck in the sleeve they don't want, but a copy of themselves is running around in the sleeve that really is them. Kind of cool. Rickard says, I mean, I enjoyed the Dresden Files TV series, but I would probably have hated it if I read the books before finding the show. Oh, hell yeah. That's always the case, right? Every time you read a book, 99.9% of the time, the book's better than the show. Why? Because when reading the books, books are have far more many pages than any script. And when you read a book, you are the casting agent. So all the music, all the characters, all the action, all the inflections of voice, all the locations, the colors, the weapons, the intensity is already cast in your brain in perfection because you've imagined it. So yeah, there is no way for any mass media to match what a book creates, because a book is based relies on your imagination to fill in the gaps, and there's no way for someone else, some other creator, to fill those gaps in for you. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me. I really hope this was this had a little bit of educational bit, just to warn you, just to bring up the idea that I know many of you who are out there who have picked up Eclipse Phase or Altered Carbon, or even want to make up your own setting, but you want to do it in like a transhuman thing, having a hard time selling it to your players. And part of selling it to some of your players is this idea that you're going to have to trust the game master. And hey, game masters, you're going to have to trust that your players don't abuse this idea that they too are nothing but, you know, data, or they can delete their brains and their bodies and switch them around and things like that. And to embrace the setting and embrace this idea that yes, you too are you too, like everyone else, is just data and can easily be manipulated around, and doing so between games. Although, hey, in between games, coming up with a great idea about maybe the big bad really is you from a different era sounds kind of a cool idea myself. So guys, have a great one. I will see you later. Have a great day. Thank you very much for watching.